What are the IT priorities of the U.S. Department of Commerce? How is Commerce working to modernize its IT infrastructure? I'll explore these questions and so much more with our very special guest, Andre Mendes, Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Andre, what about your duties and responsibilities? I wonder if you could delve a little deeper in what your day-to-day activities, functions, responsibilities are as the CIO at Commerce.
So again, a little bit of a dual hat by virtue of the areas that I just spoke of. On the commerce-wide basis, I really am responsible for the overall functioning of the organization from an IT standpoint, regulatory compliance, cybersecurity, dealing with budgets at a commerce level, activities related to FITARA that require that there be coordination across the set of bureaus in the Department of Commerce. But then, by virtue of the existence of the Office of the Secretary of CIO within my organization, providing also some more direct, strategic guidance and some operational guidance to that particular office, especially as we engage in consolidation efforts where the Office of the Secretary's OCIO provides baseline services for the smaller bureaus that are located in the building itself, and that therefore avail themselves of the use of commodity IT, such as, again, networking, external access, help desk, application development, and the such. The objective, of course, is to make sure that we can leverage economies of scale within the building so that we don't have duplicate activities taking place everywhere with smaller bureaus that can best and more cost effectively be performed under one umbrella. And so again, because of the nature of the office, I have sort of that dual hat. Although with the hiring of an OS CIO about 15, 16 months ago, that really came into a much better positioning just because, the sheer workload associated with both hats that I was handling before that were just not conducive to good administration. And so we really made sure that we officialized that position in order to enable me to concentrate on the strategic efforts and compliance efforts at the Department of Commerce level.
Yeah. So given your duties and how you so eloquently pointed out, I mean, you're dealing at Commerce with a decentralized sort of IT organization. I was wondering, what are your top, say, 3 management challenges, I throw that out there, that you face in your position, and how have you sought to address them?
Yeah. So, of course, in this day and age, the biggest management challenge in the IT arena is always going to be cybersecurity. Historically, all of these bureaus have operated very, very independently. And as a result, we have, very good cybersecurity, I would say, but at the same time, a disjointed effort at that, because people have chosen, a myriad of applications and directions in terms of cybersecurity. And so it does not enable us to leverage the economies of scale from an acquisition standpoint, from an administration standpoint, from a skill sets and training standpoint, because we have so many different applications and environments that we're dealing with pan-commerce. And so that's an issue that I'm trying to address very aggressively, on which I'm getting a very substantial amount of collaboration from my bureau CIOs. The next issue is somewhat related to that, because with all of those different efforts in the cybersecurity arena, you also have the need for expertise in substantial numbers at each one of the bureaus. And as you all know, and everybody in the industry knows, getting cybersecurity resources of very high caliber has become exceedingly difficult by virtue of competition with the private sector, competition with the vendors, and competition with agencies that have a higher profile in the cybersecurity arena by virtue of what they do, specifically in the intelligence community and also in the Defense Department. And so, because everybody's operating their own set of tools, we need a substantial amount of duplication, which normally is fulfilled by both FTEs, but then by a substantial number of contractors. And when you're dealing with those numbers and with the competitive nature of the landscape as it exists today, there is, without a shadow of a doubt, a certain dilution at the end game of talent, and that is a bit worrisome. I prefer that we operate in a more consolidated fashion and therefore can leverage fewer resources, but of the highest caliber possible. And then the third challenge is one that permeates throughout the federal sector, and that is the fact that with the distributed nature of the bureaus, and also with the substantial scope of operations that they themselves have some degree of independence inside of their organizations by the business units. And so historically, that has always represented a challenge. So just as we have a FITARA challenge from the OCIO to the budget, to the bureau CIOs, inside of each bureau, they have some degree of a FITARA challenge from the bureau CIO to the IT people that operate at the business units. And so that is something that we are trying to address as well, because just as they can leverage economies of scale internal to their bureaus, we can leverage economies of scale to the Department of Commerce at large.
So switching gears a bit, Andre, I'd like to talk about your strategic vision and key priorities for IT within commerce. So could you give us a sense of your IT strategy and what are your strategic priorities?
Sure. So, keeping in mind that everything I say is going to be by default imbued with a heavy reliance on cybersecurity, right? It's just a substrate on which everything has to be built, because otherwise it could all be sent for naught in an instant, right? So I'm not going to repeat it, anymore, right? It just is what it is. It's like oxygen for life, at least aerobic life. And so I have been a huge proponent of cloud adoption since 2011. And actually, even before that, Special Olympics actually was basically 100% cloud-based when I left in 2009. And that was done by virtue of donations of software and services and capabilities by 5 of the leading IT organizations in the world. And so if an organization like that, without any resources to speak of, could make that migration, why not a government agency? So when I came to the BBG, that became the North Star. And so we were 90% cloud based in 2014, right? With the only applications that were not cloud-based, editing of high definition video, which is, as you guys probably know, it's extremely bandwidth intensive and latency sensitive, and therefore, a very difficult accommodation for cloud-based environments back in 2014. It just couldn't be done without massive expenditures. And so when I left and came to ITA, we had a very, very strong direction already there in terms of cloud, and we effectively brought them into 100% cloud, compliance and dependency by 2018. And so when I ascended to the commerce arena, that basically became sort of a mantra, but not just because of cloud for cloud's sakes, but because the ability to leverage software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service allows you to spend a lot fewer CPU cycles and dollars on commodity operations that really, truly do not bring additional value to the mission of a particular bureau, and therefore free dollars so that they can be put into the application layer, the user interface layer, the user servicing layer that provides the je ne sais quoi of every single bureau that we operate with. I mean, the Department of Commerce was not created to run Windows or Linux servers. It wasn't created to administer databases. It was created to influence the way that organizations and people can leverage commerce in order to enable the United States to be more competitive on an international scale and to raise the level of standard of living inside of the United States by virtue of interstate commerce. And so the creation of abstraction layers for all commodity services is the main driver, from a strategic standpoint, and one that provides a very easily identifiable and relatable North Star for every single thing that we do.
I was wondering, we get into specifics, and you've mentioned cloud a couple of times. I was wondering if you could tell us more about the migration across the enterprise, and maybe some of the benefits and some of the challenges in moving to the cloud.
By and large, the benefits are a little difficult to quantify at first, right? In your typical business justification, people try to identify every single thing that is going to happen that is going to reduce this particular cost, that particular cost, and that's going to be able to pay for any and all expenses associated with the transformation and then generate savings in the end. I believe that there are models, both of current operations and of future operations, that are so drastically better during the transition that they justify being very aggressive on the movement, even if you don't have a full and complete economic analysis of the end game. And that might sound a little reckless, but I will tell you that if I spend 3 years analyzing the economic benefits of such a transcendental transformation of the IT environment, I have no doubt that I'm going to get to the end of those 3 years and be totally convinced that I've just wasted 3 years of savings and of improvements and of advancement because I was calculating the savings. And that to me is an untenable situation. There are risks that are worth taking, calculated risks, of course, that are worth taking from an operational standpoint where the benefits are so obvious that you have to take that calculated risk. These migrations become so compelling from so many aspects that not undertaking them and aggressively pursuing them is effectively the highest risk that a CIO could possibly undertake. The status quo is the highest risk in a modern environment, both from a business standpoint, a financial standpoint, a technology standpoint, and certainly a cybersecurity standpoint.
I'd like to jump to the conversation around enhancing customer experience. Can you tell us more about what you're doing in this area, and to what extent are you adopting, user-centered design principles?
So this is something that has become very much of a focus for us. Some out of just a follow through to the transformation efforts that we've just talked about in terms of standardization with software as a service and that type of environment. And so that customer experience, that ability to establish a navigation that is intuitive, and that in a lot of ways mirrors what everybody is used to now, becomes absolutely essential. Anything shorter than that becomes unsustainable in the long term, which leads us to the agility associated with these applications, right? The objective is to create an agile environment to such a degree that every day that you log into Commerce.gov, Trade.gov, Census.gov, NOAA.gov, Weather.gov, that you get an experience that is pleasant, that is to a certain degree standardized in terms of user interfaces, and that is easily learnable by anybody who is using a cell phone or a laptop to access your services. So this needs to become, again, a North Star in terms of interfacing with our stakeholders in the American taxpayers and the American population that enable us to increase our levels of satisfaction with our services and to service far more people with either the same or fewer resources.
I'd like to transition a little bit to your efforts, or the Bureau's efforts, leveraging emerging technologies. And what I mean by that is AI, machine learning, blockchain, or robotic process automation. What are you doing in this area? What technologies in this area hold the most promise for Commerce achieving its mission?
Well, quite honestly, almost all of those. We have some very advanced bureaus in terms of the way they operate. For example, PTO has already deployed a very substantial machine learning environment and what one would call artificial intelligence for patent examinations. And so, they're already reaping tremendous benefits from their efforts in that arena. I expect that NOAA and all of their efforts associated with prediction of storm patterns and trajectories, and the immensity of the impact will be dramatically improved by machine learning and artificial intelligence. I know that robotic process automation is already being leveraged by several bureaus to deal with some of the data transition and repetitive processes associated with processing citizenship requests. And of course, the census, I have no doubt, will be doing a very substantial amount of work in that in terms of preparing for the next decennial and trying to figure out the best way to conduct the most accurate possible census in history. This past census was exceptional in terms of the amount of people it reached. And of course, the barrier now, or the bar is now set very high for the next one, especially from a technological standpoint. So I expect that these efforts will continue, that they will be pan-commerce, and that very few, if any, bureaus will not be profoundly influenced by this. And of course, at the inception of a lot of these efforts, is NIST, of course, with their standardization of some of these processes. And some of these development efforts that will allow people to deploy these type of technologies in a very sane and systematic, methodical manner.
This has been the Business of Government Hour, a conversation with Andre Mendes, Chief Information Officer at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Be sure to join us next time for an informative, insightful, and in-depth conversation on improving government leadership and its effectiveness. Until then, subscribe, download, and listen to the entire interview at Podcast One, iTunes, or on your favorite podcast app. And as always at businessofgovernment.org.